Human and alien forced to bear it all during flood, then the real danger strikes. Logan Mercer wiped the sweat from his brow, his hand leaving a streak of grime on his forehead. It was the middle of another long shift, and the heat in the lower maintenance levels of the stereo station was unbearable. The air recyclers, old and unreliable, were struggling to keep the temperature under control. Instead of the usual crisp recycled air, Logan was breathing in warm, damp air that clung to his skin like a second uniform. His body felt heavy, as if the thick atmosphere was pushing down on him from all sides. Another check in Sector 7 complete. Moving to Sector 8. Logan's voice crackled into the comm unit on his wrist, sending his routine report to the control room. But instead of the usual acknowledgement, all he received in response was static. He cursed under his breath. The thick concrete walls of the station's infrastructure levels always caused problems with the communications. It was a part of the job he had learned to accept. As the chief security inspector on the busiest interspecies trading hub in the galaxy, Logan had to be used to these annoyances. Yet something about today felt off. The station was alive with activity. Voices echoed from the far corners of the hallways, the sounds of aliens and humans moving in and out of the bustling trade sectors. The smell of various species perfumes, spices, and the occasional unpleasant odor of industrial grease filled the air. Logan had long ago gotten used to the mingling smells, but today, something about the atmosphere seemed thicker, almost heavier. He rounded the corner towards the coolant regulation chamber, one of the most crucial areas on the station. This was where all the heat and waste energy generated by the station's equipment was handled. As he approached the door, something caught his eye. A flash of movement, a figure darting through a restricted access door. It was quick, too quick to be someone just passing through. Logan's instincts kicked in. No one was supposed to be in this part of the station without clearance, especially not near the life support systems. He quickened his pace, his boots echoing sharply against the concrete floor. "Hey, stop right there," he called, his voice steady but firm. The figure froze for just a moment before slowly turning to face him. Standing there was one of the most striking women Logan had ever seen. Her skin was a deep iridescent blue, shimmering slightly under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her silver-white hair cascaded down her back, a stark contrast to the dark blue jumpsuit she wore. She didn't look frightened or intimidated, not like most would when caught in a restricted area. Instead, her violet eyes met Logan's with an unreadable expression. "This is a restricted area," Logan said, his tone professional but carrying the weight of authority. He could feel a flash of tension rising between them, something neither of them had expected. The woman's lips curved into the slightest of smiles. "Identification, please," Logan added, though his suspicion was already growing. "Exara Nihilith," the woman replied calmly, her voice smooth and melodic with a hint of an accent that Logan couldn't place. "Environmental Systems Specialist. I was alerted to potential irregularities in the cooling system." Logan studied her face for a moment. He didn't trust her. He could see that she was avoiding his gaze, her eyes flicking to the control panels behind her as she adjusted her stance. Something about her behavior felt off. "You're aware that this section is only accessible with proper clearance," he said, his gaze narrowing. Exara's expression didn't change. "I'm aware," she replied, her voice cool and collected. "I was authorized." Logan's eyes flicked to her hands. They were fidgeting near a large valve panel, something that instantly set off alarm bells in his mind. "I didn't receive any alerts from control," Logan muttered, stepping closer to inspect the panel. As he did, Exara's posture stiffened. "That's strange," she said, almost too nonchalantly. Logan's brow furrowed as his fingers brushed across the large valve wheel. A sudden grinding noise filled the room, and Logan froze as he realized what had just happened. The valve had shifted. Before he could react, the sound of blaring alarms filled the chamber. Warning lights flashed across the walls. Logan's pulse quickened. "What the hell have you done?" he barked. The pressure in the chamber was rising quickly, and the air seemed to get thicker. Exara's calm demeanor remained, but now she looked just as concerned as Logan. "System purge," Exara said quickly, her voice rising over the din of alarms. "You've triggered the coolant cycle. Once the system starts, it can't be stopped until it completes a full cycle. It's locked down." The cold hit Logan like a punch to the chest. A stream of icy water burst from the overhead pipes, splashing down at their feet and rising quickly. Logan swore under his breath as the freezing water swirled around his ankles. He fought the urge to panic as his mind raced for a solution. We're going to get hypothermia in minutes if we don't act fast. Exara, unfazed by the situation, nodded. Agreed, she said simply. We need to get out of these clothes, Logan said, urgency creeping into his voice. It's the only way to conserve body heat. Exara gave him a long, assessing look, her violet eyes studying his every move. For a split second, Logan wondered if she was going to refuse. But then she reached for the zipper on her jumpsuit. Logan quickly turned away to give her privacy, pulling off his own soaking wet uniform as the cold water continued to rise around them. With the water now up to their chests, their movements became slower and more awkward. Every inch of their bodies ached from the cold. Logan's teeth chattered as he glanced back at Exara. She had already stripped down to a tight, simple undergarment that clung to her blue skin. Despite the dire situation, Logan couldn't help but notice the way the emergency lights illuminated the delicate patterns on her skin, making her look even more otherworldly. Exara shivered slightly, her arms wrapped tightly around herself for warmth. Logan fought to keep his focus on the task at hand, but his mind kept wandering back to her. Hypothermia will set in soon. We need to stay warm, he said, though his voice felt distant, like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. I know it's uncomfortable, but we need to work together to survive this. The water had risen to their necks now, and Logan's mind raced. They needed to get to higher ground and fast. As they both searched for a way out, Logan couldn't shake the feeling that the flood in the chamber wasn't the only thing threatening their survival. There was something off about Exara. He could feel it, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Stay close, he said, his voice firm. We need to find something to climb on until the purge is complete. They swam toward a small maintenance platform near the ceiling, their movements slowed by the rising water. As they pulled themselves up, Logan noticed a strange hidden access panel embedded in the wall, one that didn't appear on any of the station's schematics. That's odd, he muttered, running his fingers along the seam of the panel. Exara's gaze flicked to the panel, her eyes widening slightly. What is it? She asked, her voice now tight with a sense of urgency. I don't know, Logan replied, suspicion creeping into his mind. This panel wasn't supposed to be here. Before Exara could answer, something in the water below them moved. Logan caught sight of a dark shape circling beneath them, its movements deliberate and unnatural. We're not alone, Logan whispered, his voice filled with tension. Exara stiffened, her eyes darting toward the water. What is it? She asked again, this time with genuine fear. I don't know, Logan said, his eyes never leaving the moving shape below them. But whatever it is, it's not good. The creature's shadow seemed to grow larger, its shape becoming clearer, and Logan's heart raced in his chest. This situation had just gotten a whole lot worse. The water continued to rise around them, cold and unforgiving. Logan clung to the metal platform with one hand, using the other to help Exara pull herself up. They had barely escaped the oncoming flood, but the situation was far from over. The cold was seeping into Logan's bones, gnawing at his every movement. The chamber was eerily silent now, save for the occasional hiss of the leaking pipes. His teeth were chattering, but he forced himself to focus on what was happening. His eyes darted over to Exara, who was sitting cross-legged on the maintenance platform, her arms wrapped tightly around herself for warmth. Logan caught his breath. Her smooth blue skin glistened faintly in the dim, flickering emergency lights. He hadn't expected to see someone like her, not here, not in this position. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met, a being from another world caught in the same dire situation as him. It was impossible not to notice how alien she was, but also how remarkably beautiful. The way her silver hair shimmered in the low light, the subtle glow beneath her skin, it all seemed like a dream. But there was no time to get lost in the surreal beauty of it. They had bigger problems to face. Exara shifted slightly, and Logan noticed her struggle to suppress a shiver. It wasn't just the cold. The water was freezing, but there was something else in her expression, something Logan couldn't quite place. She wasn't just concerned about the water. There was something deeper behind those violet eyes, something she wasn't saying. Exara, Logan said, his voice softer than before. Are you all right? She didn't look at him immediately, her eyes scanning the flooded chamber, her mind clearly elsewhere. After a long pause, she turned her gaze to him, her expression neutral. I'm fine, she replied, but her voice was tight, strained, as though she was holding back something. Logan could tell she wasn't fine, but he knew better than to press. In his line of work, trust was earned, not given freely. And he had no reason to trust her yet. Logan shifted his position, trying to get a better look at the access panel he'd found earlier. It was strange, tucked away behind the platform, hidden from any view on the station's schematics. This panel wasn't on the station's maps, he muttered to himself. Running his fingers over the seams, Exara's gaze flicked to it, and Logan saw a flash of recognition in her eyes, something that made him pause. She was holding back. "What is it?" he asked, his voice edged with suspicion. She hesitated before answering. "It's nothing. Just a maintenance access panel," she said, her voice cool but unconvincing. Logan didn't buy it. There was something about her response, too quick, too dismissive. He leaned closer, studying the panel. "This is more than just a maintenance panel. It's not listed anywhere. Someone went through the trouble of hiding it. And I don't think it's just for repairs." Exara didn't reply at first. Instead, she looked at him, her violet eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "It's complicated," she said, her voice low. Logan could feel the tension thickening. She wasn't telling him everything. Something about her presence here in this flooded chamber seemed off. She hadn't been assigned to this sector, Logan knew that. And if she really was just an environmental specialist, why had she been so quick to dismiss his questions? "Look," Logan said, stepping back from the panel. "I don't know what's going on, but I know something's not right. And I'm starting to think you know more about this than you're letting on." Exara met his gaze. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment Logan thought she might argue with him. But instead she just sighed deeply, rubbing her arms as if trying to warm herself. The water had risen to their necks now, and the temperature was unbearable. But Logan couldn't let this go. Not now. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Exara said suddenly, her voice quieter than before. She wasn't looking at him now, her focus fixed on the dark water swirling around them. "The flooding. I didn't know it would trigger the purge. I was just trying to stop a malfunction." Logan studied her, trying to piece together the puzzle in front of him. "What malfunction?" Exara glanced at him, her eyes sharp but hesitant. "I was checking the cooling system for irregularities. Something's wrong with it. It's—" She stopped herself, her lips pressing together as though she regretted saying anything at all. Logan raised an eyebrow. "You're not just a systems specialist, are you?" Exara looked at him, her face hardening slightly. "I didn't come here to get caught in some technical snafu with the cooling system," she said, her voice firm now, as though her patience was wearing thin. "But I was sent here for a reason, and that reason is bigger than some simple system failure." Logan's eyes narrowed. "What's bigger than a station's cooling system?" Exara bit her lip, then seemed to gather herself. "I can't tell you everything," she replied softly, her gaze distant. "But whatever's happening on this station is far worse than a malfunction. Someone's been tampering with the systems, and they're trying to cover it up." The tension between them thickened like a heavy fog. Logan couldn't tell if she was telling him the truth or just spinning a story to get out of trouble. Her words felt weighted, like they had deeper meaning. But she wasn't about to reveal everything. But Logan wasn't going to let this go. There was something about Exara that made him uneasy, an aura of secrecy that surrounded her. And the more he learned about her, the more questions he had. Was she really just an environmental specialist? Or was there more to her presence on the station? He couldn't shake the feeling that this situation was about to become a lot more complicated. "Right now," Logan said, his voice low and steady. "We need to survive this. We'll deal with the rest later." Exara nodded, her expression unreadable, but Logan could tell she was weighing his words. There was no use in pushing her any further, not now, but something inside told him that this was just the beginning of a much darker mystery that would unfold before them. The sound of rushing water filled the chamber again, breaking the silence. They both turned their attention back to the rising flood. There was no time for more questions. Whatever was happening on this station, whatever Exara knew or didn't know, it was going to have to wait. Right now, they needed to focus on getting out alive. Logan glanced at Exara, his mind still racing as he tried to make sense of the strange sequence of events that had led them to this point. The water had now reached their necks, the cold seeping into every muscle, every inch of their skin. Logan's breath came out in visible puffs, the icy chill making it harder to focus. The sound of rushing water seemed to drown out everything else, but beneath it, Logan could hear something else, something far more sinister. He turned, his eyes narrowing. There, just beneath the surface of the water, something shifted. A dark shape too large to be a simple current. Logan's heart skipped a beat as it circled them, moving with deliberate purpose. "Ixara," he whispered, his voice tight with caution. "We're not alone." Ixara's eyes flicked toward the water. For a brief moment, her lips parted in surprise, but she quickly masked it with a calm expression. Her eyes scanned the murky depths, and Logan saw a flash of recognition. "That's no maintenance drone," she said quietly, her voice unusually tense. "It's something else." Logan's pulse quickened. The last thing they needed was some unknown creature lurking beneath them. He moved closer to Ixara, instinctively drawing her a little nearer. The water's cold was becoming unbearable, but the fear in Logan's gut had nothing to do with the temperature. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a malfunction anymore. He looked at Ixara, searching her face for any sign of fear or hesitation. "What is it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady, even though every nerve in his body was screaming to run. Ixara hesitated, her gaze locked on the water. She seemed to be weighing her words carefully before answering. "I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I've never seen anything like it before." Logan frowned. "You're telling me you've never seen a creature like this on a station designed to house thousands of species?" "I've never seen anything like this," Ixara repeated, her tone cold. "Whatever it is, it wasn't meant to be here." Logan's mind raced. What did she mean? Was she implying that someone had brought it here, or was it something that had been created, deliberately or accidentally? He couldn't be sure, but one thing was clear. The station was hiding far more than a coolant system malfunction. Just as Logan opened his mouth to ask more, the shape beneath the water lurched, sending a ripple through the surface. Logan's heart skipped again, his grip on the platform tightening as the water around them churned. Ixara's face turned pale as the shape grew closer, its movements too calculated to be a natural current. "What the hell is that thing?" Logan muttered under his breath, his mind reeling from the implications. "I don't know, but it's not a coincidence," Ixara replied, her voice edged with urgency. "We need to get out of here now." She took a step closer to him, her eyes scanning the water with growing fear. Logan glanced back at the access panel, then at the platform they were standing on. The water was quickly rising higher, now just inches from swallowing them entirely. The platform, though sturdy, wasn't going to hold forever, and whatever was lurking beneath them wasn't going to wait for them to find higher ground. Without thinking, Logan grabbed Ixara's hand and yanked her towards the far side of the platform, toward a small ladder that led to an upper level of the chamber. "We need to climb," he said, his voice tight with urgency. Ixara didn't protest, though her face remained tense. She moved with surprising agility, following Logan's lead. But as they scrambled up the ladder, a loud crash echoed from beneath the water. Logan whipped his head around in time to see a massive shape rise up from the depths, its segmented body breaking the surface with a terrifying speed. A deep, guttural growl vibrated through the chamber, sending a shiver down Logan's spine. He climbed faster, his fingers slipping on the slick metal as he reached the top. Ixara was right behind him, her breath coming in short bursts. The creature's glowing eyes followed them, its movement almost predatory. It wasn't just a creature. It was hunting them. Logan's mind raced. What the hell was going on? Why was there a creature in the cooling chamber? And how was Ixara involved in all of this? Was she hiding something? Ixara climbed up beside him, her face pale but determined. She glanced at Logan, her breath heavy. "I didn't know it would come to this," she said quietly, her voice shaking slightly. "I had no idea there was a creature in here. I swear." Logan looked at her, his suspicions only growing, but now was not the time to interrogate her. They needed to get out, and they needed to do it fast. "You better start explaining once we're safe," he said, his voice low but firm. Ixara didn't answer. Instead, she looked down at the creature still lurking below, its eyes locked on them with an eerie intelligence. The emergency lights above flickered, casting a red glow over the chamber as Logan and Ixara stood on the ladder, the water now almost completely flooding the chamber. "Stay focused," Logan said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "We need to get to higher ground now." Ixara nodded, pushing herself forward. Logan followed, every muscle in his body tense as he kept his gaze fixed on the creature below. It hadn't moved, but Logan could feel its presence, a dark, malevolent force just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They reached a maintenance platform above the ladder. a narrow surface barely wide enough for them to both stand on. But as Logan pulled himself up, the water began to rise even faster. He could feel it creeping up his legs, the cold now reaching his chest. There was no time left. They had to act. Logan's eyes darted around the room. There had to be a way out of this. His eyes landed on a door at the far side of the chamber. It wasn't much, just a small emergency exit. But it was their only chance. "Ixara," Logan said quickly, grabbing her arm. "That door. We can make it if we hurry." Ixara nodded without hesitation, and together they bolted toward the door. The water had now reached their shoulders, and the cold was becoming unbearable. Logan's muscles screamed as he moved, his mind focused solely on the exit ahead. But just as they reached the door, another loud crash reverberated through the chamber. Logan's heart stopped as he turned back, seeing the creature's massive form surge toward them, its segmented body moving faster than he ever could have imagined. There was no way to outrun it. They were trapped. Before Logan could react, Ixara's voice broke through the chaos. "Logan, get to the door. I'll hold it off." "What?" Logan stared at her, disbelief flashing across his face. "I can stop it. Just go." Ixara's voice was fierce, determined. Logan's mind raced. He knew she was trying to protect him, but he couldn't leave her. He wouldn't. But as the creature bore down on them, its glowing eyes fixed on them both, Logan had no choice. "Stay alive," Ixara shouted, and in that moment Logan saw a flicker of something behind her eyes. Something deep, something he wasn't ready to understand. Logan sprinted for the door, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature was closing in, but Ixara was already moving, stepping toward it with an intensity that sent a chill down Logan's spine. She had a plan. Logan wasn't sure what it was, but he had to trust her. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Ixara alone with whatever it was that stalked them from the depths. The door slammed shut behind Logan with a harsh metallic clang, and for a split second the world outside the chamber seemed distant. The water was still rising in the maintenance room, and Logan's pulse hammered in his chest as he turned away from the closed door, his mind racing. His breathing was shallow, his thoughts fragmented, and all he could hear was the steady echoing thrum of his own heartbeat. He had left Ixara behind. The thought gnawed at him. She had stayed. She had chosen to hold the creature off, whatever that meant. What the hell had she meant by that? How was she planning to stop it? Was she some kind of soldier? Or worse, was she part of the reason it was here in the first place? Logan's gaze flicked to the narrow corridor ahead. There had to be another way out. The station's design was a maze, and no one ever expected to be trapped in the heart of it, especially not with whatever the hell Ixara had been involved in. Something wasn't right, and Logan knew it. He had barely any information to go on, but everything inside him screamed that there was more to Ixara than met the eye. Something hidden beneath the cool professional mask she wore. He had to find answers. Taking a deep breath, Logan pushed himself forward, forcing his mind to focus. His boots splashed softly in the remaining water as he moved quickly down the narrow hallway, trying to quiet the tension that had settled like a weight on his chest. He reached the next access point, a small junction where two pipes met. It looked like nothing more than a maintenance area, but Logan knew better. He'd seen enough strange things in his life to recognize the signs of something far more significant, lurking in the shadows. His comm unit buzzed, startling him. He quickly reached for it, pulling it from his belt. "Logan Mercer," he said, his voice tight. "Inspector Mercer, this is Control. Are you reading us?" The voice on the other end sounded distant, tinny. "Control, I'm receiving you," Logan replied, his mind still buzzing with the image of Ixara standing her ground, trying to face down the creature. "I've secured myself in a safe room for now. The flooding in Sector 8 was triggered by an emergency purge, and it's escalating. I need to know if we have any backup on the way." A pause on the line. Then the voice came back, sounding even more strained. "Negative, Inspector. There's been a station-wide shutdown in communication. All sectors are affected. Security teams are currently scrambling to assess the damage." Logan's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, scrambling? There's no one on their way to help? We've lost contact with the rest of the team. The lockdown is on full alert. All non-essential personnel are to remain in their designated quarters." "Damn it!" Logan cursed, slamming his fist against the wall in frustration. Ixara had stayed behind to deal with the creature, and now no one was coming to help. The station was locked down. He had no choice but to find another way out. Logan's hand gripped the comm unit tighter, his eyes flicking to the far wall of the maintenance area. Something caught his attention. He narrowed his eyes. There, embedded in the wall, was another panel. A small, inconspicuous compartment that didn't look like part of the station's original blueprints. It was the same kind of hidden access panel he had seen earlier, the one that had piqued his suspicion. What was it doing here? Control, are you still there? Logan's voice dropped lower, as if the comm unit could help him make sense of the situation. I need clearance for something in Sector 8. A hidden panel I just found. Something doesn't add up. I can't authorize access to restricted areas right now, Inspector, the voice from Control replied. But Logan could hear the hint of frustration in their tone. You're on your own for now. Understood, Logan muttered, his grip tightening on the comm unit. With no backup and no way of contacting anyone else, he would have to rely on himself to figure out what the hell was going on. He moved swiftly towards the hidden compartment, his instincts telling him that whatever was inside it would be important. His heart raced as he pried open the cover, revealing a set of data crystals and a small glowing device embedded within the compartment. The crystals, he recognized immediately, were high-security storage, information, files, or data logs that could only be accessed with a higher clearance level. They weren't supposed to be here. Logan picked them up carefully, his fingers brushing the surface of the data crystals. They were warm to the touch, humming faintly with energy. His heart pounded harder. Whoever had hidden these here didn't want them to be found. Why, what were they hiding? As Logan turned to inspect the device, his eyes caught something else, something on the far wall. A faint series of numbers were etched into the metal. They seemed random at first glance, but Logan's sharp mind quickly pieced them together. They were coordinates. Coordinates? He muttered to himself. What the hell do they mean? The message was clear, though it made no sense. The coordinates led to another part of the station, deeper into the restricted zones. Logan's mind raced. This wasn't just a routine malfunction. Whoever was behind this had been planning something for a long time. Something dangerous, but what? He looked down at the data crystals in his hand. If he could get them to a secure terminal, maybe he'd be able to figure out what they contained. He wasn't sure if it was the right move, but with the flooding and the creature lurking in the chamber, time was running out. There was no way he was going to wait around and find out what came next. Exara was out there, and if the situation was as bad as he suspected, she needed help. Without hesitation, Logan tucked the data crystals into his jacket and moved towards the exit. His heart was still pounding and his mind was a whirlwind of questions. There was something bigger going on here, and Exara was at the center of it. As he moved through the maintenance corridors, the weight of his discoveries began to settle in. Whoever had been tampering with the station's systems had a purpose, and that purpose was far more dangerous than any malfunction. Logan's thoughts raced, but one thing was clear. He had to get to Exara, he had to make sure she was okay, and he needed to find out what secrets she was hiding. There was no turning back now. Logan moved through the narrow, dimly lit corridors, his mind buzzing with questions. Every step felt like a weight dragging him deeper into the mystery surrounding Exara and the creature. The air felt heavy with tension, the quiet hum of the station's failing systems the only sound breaking through the silence. He could still feel the cold of the floodwater clinging to his skin, but that sensation was now secondary to the puzzle that was rapidly unfolding around him. He had to find Exara. The corridor stretched before him, its metallic walls bending and warping as if the station itself were shifting under pressure. As he walked, the overwhelming sense of isolation crept over him. The usual bustle of station life was absent. No voices echoed in the halls. No sounds of machinery whirring away. Just the soft, eerie whine of failing lights and the distant hiss of cooling systems that had clearly seen better days. Logan's grip on the data crystals in his pocket tightened. Whatever was on those, it was enough to make someone go to great lengths to hide it. And whatever Exara had been involved in, whether she wanted to admit it or not, it was part of a larger, darker plan. He could feel it in his gut. The emergency lights flickered overhead, casting long, stretching shadows that danced across the walls. The tension in Logan's chest grew with every step. Was Exara still alive? Was she in danger? Was she hiding something from him, or was she simply trying to protect herself, and him, from something far worse? His comm unit buzzed again, interrupting his thoughts. He quickly pulled it from his belt. "Logan Mercer," he answered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Inspector Mercer," came the voice from control again, the sound garbled with static. "We've managed to restore some communication systems. You're going to want to listen to this." Logan's heart skipped a beat. "Go ahead," he replied, already bracing himself for more bad news. Well, it's not good, Mercer. We've been able to access some of the station's security logs. A large portion of the cooling system was deliberately tampered with by someone with a high-level clearance." The voice paused, as if weighing the words. "It looks like a sabotage operation. Whoever did this had access to classified areas. We're tracing the logs, but there's something off about the whole situation. The whole station's been compromised." Logan's blood ran cold. "What are you saying? This wasn't just a malfunction?" "No. This was intentional. Someone wanted that cooling system to fail, and now it's only a matter of time before we see what else they've planned." Logan's thoughts whirled. Sabotage? That would explain everything. The strange flooding, the creature in the chamber, and Exara's presence in the restricted zones. Whoever was behind this had planned every move, every detail. And Exara. Was she part of it? Or was she caught in something beyond her control? "Who's behind it?" Logan asked, his voice low and urgent. "We're still working on that. But, Logan, I need to tell you something else. The data crystals we've recovered, they're linked to a covert operation, one that involves more than just the station. There are records about illegal experiments, biological ones, genetic modifications. Some of the data we've seen is disturbing. They've been experimenting on sentient species, and it looks like they've been doing it right here." Logan's mind reeled. Genetic experiments? It was too much. His fingers tightened around the comm unit. This was bigger than a simple sabotage. This was an operation, an illegal, immoral one that involved weaponizing sentient beings. "We're not just dealing with a malfunction," Logan muttered. "This is something much worse." "Exactly," the voice from control responded. "And we have a feeling it's tied to the creature you encountered earlier. We need you to find Exara. She might know more about this than she's letting on." Logan's stomach clenched. Exara. He had known something was off about her, how she had seemed too calm, too composed for someone in the middle of a disaster. But now the pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit. She wasn't just a random technician. She had to be involved in whatever was going on behind the scenes. But how? Before he could respond, the comm unit crackled again, the signal dropping. "Control? Control, do you copy?" Logan called into the static, but there was no answer. He cursed under his breath and shoved the device back into his belt. The silence was deafening. Logan took a deep breath. It was clear now that whatever Exara had known or was hiding was a crucial part of the larger story. She had to be involved in the genetic experiments. Had she been a victim? Or had she been part of the team conducting them? His mind was filled with questions, and all of them pointed to her. He couldn't stand still any longer. He needed answers. And the only way he was going to get them was by finding Exara. He had no more time to waste. Logan pushed forward, rounding a corner that led deeper into the station's inner quarters. His heart pounded in his chest, his legs carrying him with a sense of urgency he couldn't ignore. He was getting closer, closer to finding the truth. He rounded another corner and stopped in his tracks. There she was. Exara stood at the end of the hallway, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. She was facing away from him, her back to the door she was standing in front of. It was the door to one of the high-security labs, sealed tight with a combination lock protecting it. Logan's pulse quickened. What was she doing here? What had she found? "Exara," Logan called, his voice low but steady. Exara stiffened at the sound of his voice, her body tensing, but she didn't turn to face him. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the station's failing systems. "Logan," she said quietly, her voice carrying an edge of something unreadable. Finally, she turned to face him, and Logan saw the faintest flicker of something almost like fear, pass across her face. What are you doing here? Logan demanded, stepping toward her. What's going on? Exara swallowed hard, her gaze locking with his. For a moment it felt as though the world stood still. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I never wanted you to be involved in this. But now that you're here, there's no going back. Logan's heart pounded as he closed the distance between them. What the hell does that mean, Exara? She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping in resignation. It means I've been hiding the truth from you, Logan, and now you're going to have to decide what side you're on, because things are about to get much worse. For the first time, Logan realized that the woman standing before him wasn't just a specialist. She wasn't just caught up in something. She was the key to unraveling the entire mess, and the danger was far greater than he had ever imagined. Are you with me, Logan? She asked softly, her violet eyes searching his face. Logan's throat went dry. He didn't know who to trust anymore. But one thing was clear. This was just the beginning of a much larger game, and Exara was at the center of it. I'm with you, Logan said, his voice firm. But you're going to have to tell me everything. The tension in the narrow corridor was palpable. Logan and Exara stood just feet apart, the distance between them feeling like miles. Exara's expression was unreadable, but there was a hardness to her gaze now, something that told Logan she was no longer the calm, composed technician he had met earlier. Something had shifted. Logan's mind raced as the weight of her words settled in. You're not just involved in this, are you? He asked, his voice quiet but filled with suspicion. You are this. Exara's eyes flickered momentarily, but she quickly masked the briefest trace of hesitation with a mask of cold professionalism. She took a deep breath as though preparing herself for something, then spoke. You're right. I've been hiding things from you. But I couldn't let you get mixed up in this, not until I knew you could handle it. And now, it's too late. Logan's heart beat faster. Her words were like pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind, but the picture they were forming was far darker than anything he had imagined. What did she mean by too late? What was she involved in? Really? Before he could respond, the faint sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Logan's hand instinctively went to his sidearm, his muscles tensing. His eyes darted to Exara, but she was already ahead of him, glancing around the corner. We've been found, Exara muttered under her breath, her voice urgent. This was inevitable. What are you talking about? Logan asked, his voice low but sharp. Found by who? Exara didn't respond. Instead, she moved quickly toward the sealed door behind her, her fingers flying over the terminal on the wall. A series of beeps sounded, and the heavy door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a dimly lit high-security room. It was filled with equipment Logan didn't recognize. Computers, monitors, strange devices, everything high-tech and locked away from the station's general operations. Get in, Exara ordered, her voice clipped. Now! Logan didn't hesitate, stepping through the door just as the footsteps grew louder, closer. As the door slid shut behind him, he turned to Exara. What's going on here? What is all this? Exara didn't answer immediately. She moved toward one of the monitors, typing furiously as data scrolled across the screen. Logan's gaze flickered to her, then back to the room. It looked like a command center, but it was far too isolated, too hidden for something this important. The equipment was advanced, much more so than anything Logan had seen on the regular stations. We've been tracking something. Someone, Exara said, her voice low, but filled with urgency. This station isn't just a hub for trade, it's a cover for something much bigger. Logan frowned, his eyes narrowing. For what? More genetic experiments? Exara's lips tightened. She turned to face him, her expression grim. No, something worse. Something that's been brewing for years. This station, it's a front for illegal biological warfare research. Weaponized life forms, Logan. And it's not just happening here. Logan's stomach sank. Weaponized life forms? The words echoed in his mind louder than the buzz of the station's failing lights. They're not just experimenting with genetics. They're creating sentient, genetically engineered creatures designed to destroy entire species. Exara continued, her hands moving swiftly over the monitors. They've been using this station as a testing ground for years. I've been investigating it, tracking the project for galactic intelligence, trying to stop it before it spread further. The words hit Logan like a punch to the gut. His mind struggled to process the weight of what she was saying. "You're telling me you've been working for galactic intelligence this whole time?" Logan asked, his voice edged with disbelief.
"And you didn't think to tell me?"
Exara didn't flinch at his anger. "I couldn't. This project, the people behind it are dangerous, and anyone who gets too close risks becoming a target, including you." Logan's mind spun. Galactic intelligence. It was the only organization powerful enough to track down a project like this. But even with that knowledge, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Exara's story. Things she still wasn't telling him. "You still haven't answered my question," Logan pressed, stepping closer. "Why didn't you tell me about the creature? And why were you in the restricted area? What do you really know about this?" Exara paused, her fingers hovering above the console. For a long moment, Logan thought she wouldn't answer. But then she sighed and turned to face him fully. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Logan saw a flicker of vulnerability in her expression. "I was sent here to find out who was responsible for these experiments," she said quietly. "But what I didn't know, what I didn't expect, was that the experiments weren't just happening on the station. They were being broadcasted across the galaxy. Whoever is behind this project has ties to some of the largest powers in the universe, the Terran hegemony, the Syndicate. And they are who I've been trying to expose." The pieces started to fall into place, but the bigger picture was still too hazy. Logan shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. "So what happens now? We just expose them and it all ends? It's that easy?" Exara's lips twisted into a faint, bitter smile. "It's never that easy. There's too much at stake. Whoever is behind this won't let it go. They'll come for us. They'll come for everyone." Just as the gravity of her words settled in, the door to the command center banged open, and a group of figures in black uniforms stormed in. Logan's body went rigid, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. But before he could pull it free, the figures raised their own weapons, pointing them directly at him and Exara. One of the figures stepped forward, his voice low and commanding. "You're not going anywhere." Logan's eyes widened as the man's helmet came off, revealing a sharp, angular face. The man smiled. A cold, calculating smile. "I think you've uncovered something you weren't meant to, Exara," the man said, his voice laced with venom. "And now you're going to regret it." The realization hit Logan like a physical blow. These weren't just rogue security forces. They were assassins, hired mercenaries working for the very organization Exara had been trying to expose. "I'm afraid it's game over, Exara," the man sneered. Logan's heart raced. This was it. The stakes had just reached a whole new level. They had to get out now, but the walls were closing in, and it seemed like their only choice was to fight. But could they even survive? Exara's eyes flickered with a mix of resolve and fear. "We don't have much time," she whispered to Logan, her voice tight. "Stay close and follow my lead." Logan nodded. They didn't have a choice. The battle had begun. The room was thick with tension. Logan's fingers twitched toward his sidearm, but he knew it was useless. The mercenaries had them cornered, their weapons trained on both him and Exara. The man who spoke, his smile cold and calculating, stood a few paces away, his posture rigid with authority. "This is the end of the line for you," the leader said, his voice calm, almost bored, as if he had delivered this line countless times. His eyes flickered toward Exara, a cruel glint in them. "You were always the loose thread. Now we'll tie it up." Logan's mind raced. The walls were closing in fast. He could see the exit across the room, but there was no way they could make it. Every move he made felt like it would be their last. The cold metallic click of the mercenaries' weapons cocking echoed in his ears, amplifying the imminent danger. Exara stood next to him, her body tense, but her gaze focused. She was a fighter, but this was different. The odds were stacked against them. Her usual calm demeanor was replaced by a fierce determination that Logan had never seen before. "We don't have time for this," Exara muttered under her breath, her eyes flickering to the console across the room. She knew something he didn't. Logan could feel it. Before Logan could ask what she meant, Exara's voice rang out, sharp and clear. "Move now!" With a swift motion, Exara grabbed a small glowing device from her belt, pressing a button on its surface. Logan barely had time to react as a loud, echoing bang shattered the stillness. The lights flickered once, then went out. The entire room plunged into darkness and Logan's heart leapt into his throat. In the pitch black, Logan heard the unmistakable sound of a struggle, crashing metal, shuffling footsteps and the sharp cry of a mercenary. Exara's quick thinking had bought them the seconds they needed, but this fight was far from over. Logan's eyes adjusted to the darkness, and his senses sharpened. He could hear Exara moving quickly, the soft hum of her bioluminescent skin glowing faintly as she repositioned. The mercenaries were disoriented, stumbling, their weapons firing blindly into the darkness. Logan didn't wait. He sprang into action, ducking behind one of the overturned consoles, his hand reaching for his weapon. He didn't have time to wonder how Exara knew that the power grid could be overridden, or how she had managed to plant a device on the security system. All he cared about now was getting them out alive. In the confusion, one of the mercenaries fired in his direction, but Logan was faster. He dove to the side, his body skimming against the cold floor, the bullet grazing past him. He rolled behind another console and came up with his weapon drawn, targeting the nearest mercenary. With one swift movement, Logan fired. The shot landed, and the mercenary crumpled to the ground, his weapon skidding across the floor. Logan's pulse raced. He didn't have time to celebrate the victory. There were still more mercenaries left. He turned to Exara, who was moving with precise, controlled motions, her body glowing faintly as she disarmed another mercenary, her strength evident as she threw the man to the ground. Logan was taken aback for a moment, watching her effortlessly subdue the mercenary, and in that fleeting second their eyes locked. "Focus," Exara shouted, her voice hard but urgent. Logan snapped back into action, firing another shot at a mercenary who was trying to get to their equipment. He missed the first time but didn't hesitate, firing again and landing the shot. The mercenary dropped, but Logan barely had time to process it before he heard more footsteps. Louder this time, more organized. "The backup was coming. Exara, we need to move now," Logan shouted, his voice strained. The exit was still clear, but not for long. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before the station's security forces arrived, and when they did, the situation would get much worse. "We can't leave yet," Exara said through gritted teeth, her voice filled with frustration. "Not until I get what we came for." Logan's chest tightened. "What the hell are you talking about?" Exara didn't respond immediately. She moved towards the console, typing quickly. Logan saw her eyes scan the data as it appeared on the screen. Blueprints, classified documents, encrypted files. Whatever it was vital. "They've been experimenting with human DNA," Exara said, her tone cold. "The creatures, they're using human genetic material to create weapons. Not just against humans, but against all sentient species. They've been using this station as a testing ground. We need to expose it or it'll continue. They'll keep using the technology to create more weapons, more creatures." Logan's heart pounded in his chest as her words settled in. The creature, the experiments, it was all connected. He had to stop them, but more importantly, he had to make sure Exara was safe. She had been in the middle of this for so long. She had risked everything. He moved toward her, but just as he reached her, the door to the command center flew open with a crash. Logan's head whipped around. A tall figure in black armor stepped through the doorway, followed by several more heavily armed mercenaries. "I think you've overstayed your welcome," the figure said, his voice cold and calculated. Exara didn't hesitate. She slammed her fist onto the console, sending a shockwave of energy through the room. The door slammed shut, locking with a resounding clang. Logan glanced at her, his breath catching. "Let's finish this," she said, her voice filled with finality. Without waiting for an answer, Exara stepped forward, her glowing hands raised, and with a fierce thrust, she sent a surge of energy straight at the attackers. The pulse of energy rippled through the room, throwing the mercenaries off balance and sending them crashing into the walls. Logan didn't wait for them to recover. He charged forward, taking down another mercenary with a quick punch before moving to Exara's side. As the final mercenary crumpled to the ground, Logan turned to Exara, his heart racing. "We're not out of this yet," he said, his voice strained. Exara's eyes softened for a moment. "No, we're not," she said quietly, "but we've taken the first step." Together they moved to the control panel and Exara began uploading the stolen data, everything she had risked her life to uncover. The truth, evidence of illegal experiments. The data would expose everything to galactic intelligence, to the rest of the universe, and no one would be able to silence it. As the data finished uploading, Logan took a breath, the weight of the moment settling in. "This isn't over," he said, his voice hoarse. Exara nodded, but there was a look of resolve in her eyes. "No, Logan, but at least now we have a chance." As the station's alarms blared in the distance, signaling that the battle wasn't over, they turned toward the exit. It was time to fight their way out, together,